Our top focus on the show today. Over a period of time, an increasing number of children and teenagers have been driven towards social media. Children going out to play or for that matter making new friends has been long forgotten. These days, kids choose to stay indoors and spend most of their time scrolling on their phones and going through social media feeds. They live in a virtual world. This has had adverse effects on the neurological growth of teenagers. Now, according to a paper published by the journal Comprehensive Psychiatry, prolonged social media use, especially on video sharing platforms such as TikTok, is exposing young people to a growing number of content creators. Exposing themselves and creating videos has in turn begun affecting them with Tourette's syndrome and other disorders. Considering how alarming the situation is, Seattle's public school district has sued 4 tech giants, alleging that the firms are to blame for the worsening mental health crisis among students, and that it has a direct impact on the school's capacity to accomplish their educational mission. The case, which has been filed in the US District Court against Alphabet, Meta, Snap and TikTok, claims these companies purposely create their products to attract young people to their platforms. And that has now resulted in a mental health crisis amongst growing children. Following the lawsuit, in an emailed statement to Reuters, Google said it has invested heavily in creating safe experiences for children across its platforms and introduced strong protections and dedicated features to prioritize their well-being. Snap said in its response that it works closely with many mental health organizations to provide in-app tools and resources for users, and that the well-being of its community is its top priority. Meta says they have developed over 30 tools to support kids and their families. TikTok is yet to respond. These tech companies in the past have said they aim to create an enjoyable experience for users and exclude harmful content. Therefore, they invest in moderation and content controls. The schools in their lawsuit have argued that these platforms have successfully exploited the vulnerable minds of the youth and hooked tens of millions of students across the United States and resulted in excessive use of social media. In a study conducted by JAMA Pediatrics about the frequency of teens checking social media, it was discovered that participants checked their phones at a very high frequency and were lured in mostly by Facebook, Instagram and Snapchat. In their complaint, the schools say students with mental health issues perform worse than their other schoolmates, forcing school managements to take steps including training teachers to identify and address such symptoms. They are even made to hire trained personnel and create additional resources to warn students about the dangers of social media. And that's not all. These schools also plan to seek compensation for monetary damages from these tech giants. For more on this story, we're now joined by Michael Ovens, president of the US Global Center for Cyber Policy. Mr. Ovens, thanks for joining us here on WION. These schools have squarely blamed tech companies for the growing mental health crisis among children, saying they deliberately create content to hook kids who often end up getting addicted to social media. And the kids suffer while the companies make big bucks at their expense. Is this a first-of-its-kind lawsuit? Do you believe there is merit in the arguments made by the schools? Do these tech giants have liability?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. So it's a great question to kind of delve into. At the Cyber Center, we're used to looking at policy that protects countries and businesses and digital assets of people. This is interesting because we're forced now to look at policies as they relate directly to the protection of children, right? And how social media is potentially harming our youth. But, to the question of the lawsuit, I do believe, to our knowledge, this is the first specific lawsuit of its kind, where it breaks down the components of not only do social media companies look to hook youth and young people onto their platforms and into the content. But secondly, is this creating a mental health crisis? And the question with us is going to be, where is that bar at, and what does that actually look like? I'm not a medical professional, and there's a lot of people out there that will weigh in that, especially throughout this case. But there's no doubt that social media companies want to gain more content and want to add more users. That is how they grow. That is how they, look to build profits for advertising, is to get more people on their platform. So to say that, companies are looking at ways to get more people, and I bet youth, on their platform, sure, I definitely believe that is a part of the goal of all the social media companies.
All right. So while the model that these social media companies adopt is really not in doubt, but here we're talking about a lawsuit. The schools are even seeking damages from these companies. Do you think these charges can stick in a court of law? Could this trigger an avalanche of similar lawsuits? And also, looking at the big picture, if we all agree that addiction to social media is a real issue, especially amongst children, how do we best address it?
Yeah, there's a challenge when it comes to a lawsuit, because there is a threshold that the plaintiff actually has to meet to say that this was done deliberately. And I think we know that there's been studies that's already done that's obviously shown the higher rate at which youth are on social media. And we also know that the algorithms that all social media companies use are meant to reinforce information that people are already looking at, right? It's sending people down rabbit holes is part of the algorithms that they all utilize. And yes, it is biased, and it can be dangerous, along with the various trends and challenges that we see that kids want to engage in. I think we all say, hey, the best thing for kids to do is get off the screens and get outside, meet people face to face, engage with other people. And that's part of the challenge with this lawsuit, though, is going to be the proof that the increased engagement of these social media platforms is actually causing a worsening in mental health. There have been some studies that show like up to 30% negative feelings are invoked in kids that spend a significant amount of time on social media. But to go to the legal aspect of this, and again, I'm not an attorney, but we do look exclusively at policy and how it relates to different companies and to people. And in the U.S., there is a federal law that has protections for social media companies from liability, specifically about third-party content. And I think in this case, it's what we're talking about, whether it's Meta or any of the other companies, that this is third-party content that people are uploading. However, what's unique about this lawsuit, specifically the Seattle Public Schools, is that they are not questioning about the content that the third parties are uploading. What they're specifically talking about, the argument is about how the social media companies are promoting it, right? And continue to pull students and youth down this potentially dangerous path, and getting them more and more wrapped up into whether it's body shaming issues, or whether it's just negative trends that are going on, or just issues and items that hurt their self-esteem. So this is going to be the key. No other school system that we know of in the U.S. is actively pursuing similar legislation. But yes, to your question, could it lead to other lawsuits? Absolutely, because we know this is not regulated to just the Seattle area or the Washington state issue. It's a national issue in the U.S. and one could say a global issue.
It's a global issue and a first of its kind lawsuit. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. And in case it does go in favor of the schools, it can set a very important precedent. On that note, Michael Ovens, thank you for speaking to WION.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.